Yo YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy SalvationsElite. We're back with another video, guys. And guys, I'm pumped about this video, man. Today we're doing a conversation with a friend of mine. So as many of you guys know, I work for MLG. I was a ref for MLG during World War II and during Black Ops 4. The guy who we're talking to today is the tournament director for MLG, or I guess was now. You know, rip MLG. But he was a tournament director while I was there. He's been the tournament director for a long time for MLG. And so basically, you're going to hear from him. But that's how I got to know him, and he was in charge. He was kind of in charge of all the refs and making sure the tournament ran smoothly. He had a lot of really great experiences through his time in esports and in Call of Duty and with MLG. And I thought this was a really, really good conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I don't want to delay this any longer because it's obviously a pretty long conversation. Just look at it like a podcast and throw it on in the background while you're doing something, because I think it's a really fun conversation. You guys are going to get a lot from it and hopefully enjoy it. If you guys do, leave all your comments down below, and I always appreciate all the support. Modern Warfare is coming, and it's about to get really, really crazy on the channel. So thanks for tuning out. Let's get right into the video. Let's go. All right, guys. So here we are. I'm here. We got Pej, who is the tournament director for MLG since 2012. Now, I guess, kind of former tournament director, I guess, since 2012 for all COD Open events. And we're just going to get right into it. Pej, what's going on?
Hey, man. How you doing? Pleasure to be on this fantastic show here.
I know. This is actually the first time we've done a conversation like this on the channel, so I'm actually pretty excited. You're the first, so yeah, I feel good about yourself there, man.
I feel honored here.
Yeah,
we had our conversations, through the tournaments and the days, but it's always good to recap on the more, face to face when we're not in the same event.
I know, literally, for sure. But yeah, so I guess you can kind of start off with your esports origin story and gaming background and how you got connected with MLG, and we can start from there for real.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm old, so if I go back to my early days, everyone's like, oh, I played Nintendo or whatever.
Right.
So I was a PC gamer for shooters and serious games, and then I had my Nintendo 64 and I had my GameCube, and that was my deal in high school.
Yeah.
And then one of my best high school buddies, he got a summer job at Best Buy where he was working all the midnight shift hours, the overnight hours.
Okay, yeah.
And then he got a really good discount, and he basically bought that's when he got Xbox and Halo. And after he played a lot of it, he's like, "Oh, John, you gotta play this.
You gotta hop on with
such a good game." So I was like, I don't know, Xbox, I don't know. I'm a Nintendo guy.
I play Smash.
I know. Those were great games.
Yeah, I mean, hey.
But so I ended up trying out, ended up trying Halo. Tested it out at his place.
Okay.
I was like, wow, this is an amazing shooter. This is GoldenEye on crack, at that point in time. And so I got hooked, and that was kind of my senior year, I think, in high school. So we basically, I think, at least every week, at least 1 or 2 days, after school, I'd go over to his place.
Oh man,
we'd game a little bit, and that was a staple that year, and that exposed me a little bit into at least shooting gaming, because I think Halo was actually a serious shooter as that it took.
Would you guys mostly play together, would you guys 1v1 in free for alls, or what would you guys do?
Yeah, so we would do we were the total quintessential Halo 1 news when you look at it. It's oh, let's play all rockets.
Oh yeah,
max up the shields, infinite grenades. So we would do free for alls, and we would anywhere from 2 to 4 people. We'd all cram into my buddy's room and just do all rockets, and then we do the 2v2 blood gold CTF on the same console.
Oh man.
But that's the stage. There was nothing like that by today's standards. We all laugh about it. That was so much fun. I think a lot of people at least my age, got
100%.
Time. I think what ended up happening was I think it was near the end of that year, my senior year. That is when one of the first 50K, Halo 50K started.
Oh really?
And I remember because we were starting we got so hooked in, we started doing the go online, watch the videos of people doing stuff, and really montage-y, but people who didn't make videos. And that's where I think there was some it was basically a video ad for this tournament, which was Halo 50K.
The first time that's really a thing that you've seen, right? I mean, you're yo, what is this?
And I was oh, this is amazing. And it was for that time, it was a professionally produced montage thing. I was oh, this is amazing, this is great. Then it was oh, well, it's hooked up to this this site and this league, and they have these tournaments across. And then they started getting involved, and okay, wow, there's this whole scene about competitive gaming. And then that kind of started it. And then over that summer and got into it, and then we learned about like XPC and like connecting your, running your routers and wires to play online.
Oh man, yeah.
And then I think we started watching like videos on like the ogres or like some of the top players tournaments, and then we really got hooked, and that's kind of really got us started in the esports. And they basically rode that train from like Halo 1, Halo 2, even into Halo 3 of like playing. But I think what the key part there is like got so hooked on Halo 1, played a couple tournaments on Halo 2, and then like it got to the point where like, oh, this is MLGs, they're doing these tournaments, they're doing one a month, and they're hitting like all these cities across the US. I was like, dude, this is great. I think so. We went to like Halo 1, we went to like 50K3 in Atlanta.
Oh, okay, dang.
That was like our first tournament. And that was actually only a couple months before Halo 2 came out. Then Halo 2 comes out, and like we're like super hooked now because we played with
What year did Halo 2 come out?
2004.
Okay, dang. Yes, that's throwback.
It was like November 2004. And then
November 9th. Nice.
November 9th, exactly.
Nailed it.
I'm like, I had my pre-ordered Halo 2 2 copy. Got that. That's when I signed up for Xbox Live. I got my 3-letter gamer tag.
Oh, baby.
And it's like a real 3-letter gamer tag. It's
that actually is wild.
XQ1 or... Oh, yeah. I mean, I would say if I play once a week, every week I'll get like messages of people trying to buy.
Really?
3-letter gamer tag. Yeah.
What's the most you ever been offered
up to
for?
150 is the most offered in tech.
Solid, honestly.
I was like, it can't.
No, yeah. At this point, though, it's cemented in legacy.
It's like if your email was John at yahoo.com, like you're never getting that email.
No
so
way.
I'm kind of starting to feel that with Xbox.
I mean, that's legendary, you know? I mean, you're going to have that for decades. It's going to go down, you know?
Well, at some point, someone's going to really want to buy it, hopefully.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
I know. You need that guy to blow up, and then he's like, I'll pay
And he needs to be like a millionaire.
So, right, yeah.
So actually around that time though, so we started going to these tournaments and they're so much fun, but like look, we were like college kids and like we weren't wealthy or anything. We worked our jobs and like flying across the country to play in tournaments that even at that point in time, unless you were like coming in first place, you were losing money.
Oh, 100%.
Like because there was like the prize money for basically anything under first place would basically cover your airfare or cover your like hotel. Like that's it. So
what did people say to you like when you told them like, yo, we're going here? Like what would they say? Because I didn't really get into the esports scene like until it was a thing, like in like like 2010 in the mid 2010s.
The people who I was friends with is like you talk to them and it's like, oh, that's kind of a cool thing you're doing. Yeah. And you don't like drop it all in at once. They'll be like, oh, hey, I'm driving 16 hours to Atlanta with
you ease them into it,
Yeah, he's like, oh no, it's a cool little thing. I thought, it's a little party, see how good we are,
Yeah. Oh, cool, nice.
Yeah, and I think my parents were like, "What? No, this is." I was like, "Well, I'm an adult now, so too bad."
Yeah.
I was like,
I'm going.
But I don't think I told too many. Most of my friends, like, you just ease them into it, and they're okay with it. It took a little bit of like educating of like what they are. Even that in now, like I talk to people now at work, or at least my professional, non-gaming job, and some of them like are hip to it, or at least know what esports and gaming is. And actually, most of the ones who do know what it is because like their sons or daughters like are like watch Twitch.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Are involved. But then what ended up happening was, I think, for the Halo 2, they announced all this. Yeah, it was 2006.
Yeah.
MLG announced this like huge circuit. They were hitting like all the regions. They're doing like games on the West Coast and in the middle of the country and on the East Coast. And I was like, oh, dude, it's like I so want to be a part of this and like go, but like I don't think I can shell out.
What? Shell out thousands for travel.
This is the time when like when you go to these events, is you'd have like one person would get a room. And then you have like 40 people.
Oh yeah, you're all laying on there,
It's all 100%. Like teenagers and like people who are just like kind of scrounging just to be there. And so you get a room, and basically everyone who knew were like, oh, I'll give you $20, and you got to sleep on the floor,
sleeping bag on the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's
and like
crazy.
That's like what it was. But I was like, I can't scrounge around like $500 every month to go do this on the online forums. Like I think it was like Puckett would post those things every month, when they had an event, they're like, oh, hey, we're looking for refs to volunteer. And,
Oh,
you
interesting.
know, if you're in the area, and you basically, one of the requirements was you had to have participated in an event
Oh, interesting. Okay.
to actually referee
Yeah.
or help them
Because they wanted
initiate.
at least hopefully you understood the process, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
like you need to be somewhat familiar. There's some type of screening.
That was the requirement, you know. It's like
Yeah. But like that was like
as
the only one.
long
Like,
as
that
you
and the
knew what was
drinking.
happening here, you know.
So I actually responded back, and I actually got, so the buddy who got me into Halo, we were like, hey, we're a team. You know, it's like me and my buddy are gonna come
Yeah.
and ref. And like we found like someone, we were in so like we were actually kind of like near Richmond, Virginia, and we
Okay.
knew people who were actually going up, so we were carpooling with them. They're like, oh yeah, we'll give you a hotel room, but you got to do your own travel. I'm like, okay. So we actually got it set up, and they were like, oh yeah, you're gonna come and ref. And then basically my buddy ended up like, the weekend it ended up being was his 21st birthday. So he's like, man, I can't do it. I got to do all this. I got to
no.
do like real cool adult stuff. I was like, oh, dude, how fun would it be with a bunch of gamers?
Yo, let's
to
just all go
out for
down here and
21st?
party for your 21st. Let's go.
So he actually ended up dropping out, and I was like, oh, it sucks. But I still went with the guys, and
Okay.
kind of, that was my first event, was like New York in 2006. Or
Yeah.
technically it was Meadowlands.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Meadowlands 2006.
That's wild.
And like that was when they got the USA TV series, so they had like the full like TV production crew. They just had like the money.
That's crazy. That
so
was
basically it went from
then.
like a 2005 where it was just like kind of not a rinky dink, but it was definitely like a grassroots.
Right. Where were the events taking
bootstrap.
place? Like in hotel convention centers?
Yeah. So in 2005, it was mainly like hotel conference rooms.
That makes sense.
I think in 2006, when they started, like, they just got so big that they basically, not very many hotels could actually host them. So they
Yeah.
put them in these pretty big conference centers. They just got huge. And so like that was my first VR. I was like, I walked in, I was like, holy moly.
Yeah, I bet. This is gamer heaven for back then, especially.
Yeah, exactly. So like you have that first, when you go into your first, like, even though I had already been to two, I had participated in 3 events, I think, actually, before that.
Yeah.
So I had done 50K 3 in Atlanta for Halo 1. I had done Washington, D.C., because I was from that area at that time, Halo 2. And then I had also done MLG Philly 2005, which was the infamous Team Slayer only Halo match.
Oh, my
And
word,
they did Halo 1 and Halo 2. So the first Thursday, Friday, I think, was Halo 1. And then Saturday, Sunday was Halo 2. And so we actually only went for the Halo 1 piece.
Oh, wow, okay.
And we lost to T Squared's team when he was doing his True Life, MTV True Life. That was the time frame of when that was. So we got knocked out. So those are 3 events I had been to. So even though I'd been to 3 full events in 3 different cities, like walking into there when they had like the full production, everything like set up for that show, it was still like, holy moly, this is a whole new concept of what's going on.
That's wild, for sure.
So that was pretty awesome. And I did a good job. Like, it's not that hard to do a good job. Is like, you learn this in life, like, just don't mess up, which generally means like, just don't be lazy, do what's asked of you, and like pay attention.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and then basically they're like, oh, hey, want to come to Dallas next month? And I was like, yeah.
Who was telling you that at the time? Like,
this is Puckett
who was
this
it?
time.
Oh, it's Puckett.
Puckett was like the tournament director when I started.
Oh, interesting.
And so now he's Mr. Overwatch, right?
Yeah, now he's Puckett, you know.
No, he was a really fun guy though.
Oh yeah.
Like he was like, oh yeah,
sure.
Bags, yeah, you want to come to Dallas? Sure, let's do that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got started, and basically that whole season, like, they kept on inviting me to new events, and I actually got paid in Dallas, which was nice.
Oh wow,
that was the first
that's
one that
wild.
paid you.
That's crazy.
And they actually flew me down. I didn't have to hit.
That's when they're going big time.
So I felt like I was in.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I feel that.
But it's like I started as like a referee, just like the lowest level on the, well, maybe not the lowest, maybe like merchandise or like.
I mean, I was an unpaid intern in the office, so
how does that work? Even lower.
Yeah, I know.
Well, technically, I was unpaid on that first one. Like, it was just,
you were there.
We'll give you a hotel, and
that's pretty low. You know, I mean, that's pretty low.
And this is before they were public, and they didn't have those.
The
corporate
Activision
controls that you have to pay people who work for you.
Yeah, like what? Oh, no.
So I did that that was like 2006, and
Yeah.
then like did it again, and basically that kind of started it. Where every year is I just kept on going to the events, and basically from 2006 to present, the only open event that I've missed was like 2008. There was one in Toronto.
Oh, no, do you
2000,
not have a visa or do you not have a passport or what?
I think it was that, or it was like my uncle died or something. I
Oh,
had a funeral or
that's a
something.
lot different.
Yeah. But it was one of those weird. It was like, oh, we're gonna do this thing with MLG Canada, and I don't want to say it was off circuit, but it was
Okay.
an anomaly. But it's like that's what I think that's actually emblematic of what I think gaming is now. Is like when I get to now, like, oh yeah, well, what I do is I direct the tournaments, and I have oversee a staff of the 10 to anywhere 10 to 20 individuals. That's great, but it took me, I basically was a referee for 3 to 4 years, and then they basically slowly moved up, and I was like, okay, I went from referee to like a main stage ref.
Yeah,
I did main
that's
stage
the
refereeing,
progression, right?
where I was talking with the different individual. Like you're basically that main stage rep is kind of cool that at for a lot of people because you're right there side by side with all like
Yeah, on the main stage.
on the
Yeah.
main stage, so you're running the stuff. So like I was a main stage referee on the infamous, it was 2010 national championships where who was it? Was it Straight Rippin where they were going to win on Onslaught and Halo 3, and then on Capture the Flag,
Oh
and then
man.
Fox reset and kicked everybody out.
Doing that back then must have been just so frustrating because there weren't
Oh,
like
that
the
was
hot fixes and
insane.
things that you knew about already, right?
No, and it was so much more like you had to pay attention to the game because over the years, basically,
Yeah.
MLG and just like eventually the esports kind of got its reputation within the publishers, and so they like started to listen where like, oh hey, you should probably implement this mechanic into the game, or help us do this. Where like back then, it's not that they ignored us, but they were like, no, we're building this game and you can do what you want. Like how we had to do capture the flag when we were way back for like Halo 2 is you set a time limit to 30 minutes, and the regulation was actually to 15. So the
Oh.
individual rep had to actually like pay attention to what the score was
Yeah.
when it hit 15, and then manually determine based on the rules that we
Oh,
described
okay.
who had the flag and who didn't, and if that ended the game.
I didn't realize that. Yeah.
And so like now that's all built into the games, and so it's
Right.
basically automatic. And a lot of the referees is a lot of the job of some of the kind of officials is more so of managing the people and making sure things get done on time. And
Yeah.
like back in the day, it was like you had to pay attention to every minute of the game and every second because of those
literally
things. But it's like that grind is like you did that, and you go to main stage. I did main stage for a while, then I was like a head ref for a while, and then finally like I think 2012. So after 6 years of kind of grinding my way through this, that's when I kind of finally there was an opening, and they had some roles in as tournament director. And then
was that for COD then?
So it actually didn't start at COD. It started actually with League of Legends. So I was also the tournament
interesting.
director
I did not know that.
for the famous ARAM DQ League of Legends.
Oh wow!
2012.
Dang, I didn't know you did that.
Yeah. Now we only did League of Legends a little bit. So I did I think 1 or 2 events, and then but then we went back to Halo a little bit. I think there was like a 1 or 2 year stint where Call of Duty was not part of the circuit. I did the League of Legends. I did the Halo. Did Call of Duty. And then more recently, we've done actually some more Halo, as well as some Gears of War. So pretty broad perspective of the different titles. But yeah, it's not all. You don't just get appointed, and it's like it's a grind. And you put your time in, and eventually you do good work, it'll be recognized. And I think that's probably a good message there.
For sure. Like if you want to get into esports,
life,
right? And life in general. Obviously, at some point, MLG became more professional, and you had like the real streams, and they had like MLG TV, so they're putting like a lot of money into like the production value of the show. And like coming in like the end of Black Ops 2 is when it really started ramping up. So like what, end of 2013, middle of 2013 was when things would have started ramping up for Call of Duty. So like, what do you remember about like? Because that would be kind of like the early days of like modern competitive Call of Duty, So what do you remember about those early days?
I love that. So
yeah.
I can even go myself like. After Halo 3, like I stopped playing Halo.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like Halo 3 came out. I played it for like a couple months. And then somebody was like, "Oh, hey man, you gotta check out Call of Duty." It's like this is when Modern Warfare came
Yeah,
out.
Modern
I played
Warfare.
Modern Warfare, and I was like, "Oh, boy!" I played it. I was like, "This brought back like that same feel that when I first played Halo 1." Like,
Yeah.
I'm reinvigorated on the shooting now, or shooting, FPS on the console. Super pumped on that, and started playing that. Got involved, and like we picked up a couple like little things here and there. I think in 2008, 2009, where we were doing kind of like invite only, kind of almost
Okay.
not exhibition, but he's kind of specialized. But then we got to the more back to like Call of Duty big. And I think at that point in time, I actually spent a couple seasons. I think this is like before 2012. I was actually I was main stage ref for a couple years within, I think it was Black Ops 1 or Black Ops 2. I really liked it because it like I basically what I saw was like Call of Duty is kind of in its infancy for console shooting, whereas Halo had been
kind of
built
maturing
up over the past like almost 7-8 years. So we were able to like take a lot of what we learned from Halo and then apply it to Call of Duty. So like they didn't have all those growing pains.
That makes sense
from the start.
Yeah,
and like that was cool to be a part of that. And I also like to. It got to the point where I was like, you see the same people every day up on the main stage, and it's like you build a rapport. But it's like, I think there was a lot of like that element of respect, and there wasn't like entitlement from either parties of like, hey, you shouldn't be here, like we're running the show. Like no, it was a mutual respect. I think that was a really cool dynamic that we were able to like instill from the early Call of Duty that I think lasted pretty
that's interesting long. Do you think like that structure how much do you think that structure from Halo that carried over into COD like helped it? Do you think it helped it grow faster than like what Halo did because that structure was already there?
I think so. I mean, it obviously helped that I think the publisher was more receptive to
True.
the esports than the original
than Halo was
kind of Bungie or Halo. That's probably actually the biggest driver is I think a lot of what MLG is trying to do at least in the early days was it's almost like despite what the publishers really wanted. Like I don't know if you remember, like we actually had Madden tournament.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And it's like and we obviously with the Smash, and a lot of publishers are like, oh well, you can't do this, outside of our direct, sanction or supervision.
For sure.
So I think being in an environment where like the publisher was on board and was there with like MLG's on board, I think that probably the most like flourishing in terms of creating the environment to get the players excited, to get the organizers excited, and also like having just a great product for the actual people who are consuming it, watching it, or even playing it.
For sure.
And the one thing I do remember though is like, so Modern Warfare 4 or Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare was good.
Yeah.
Then they went to like Black Ops, and I think maybe it was after Modern Warfare 2. I forget exactly which title it was, but it was like they didn't build like the actual COD engine. Didn't have like a lobby system built.
That was Modern Warfare 3. It had to be all online, right?
Well, that was a whole nother thing. Like that whole online thing.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Like it was probably like 3 years until like everyone figured out like how to actually get it smoothly.
Yeah.
But there wasn't like a lobby system. Like you literally couldn't have a pregame lobby. And it's really what it was. It was they're building the game for the retail player. Back in the day, if you were going to play multiplayer, you're going to lug your Xbox to your buddy's house, and then it goes to online, and you're going to play online. You're going to play by yourself. So they designed the system to that. So when we try to have a tournament, it's like what you had to do is they basically had to have I think we were talking to the Treyarch people, and like or MLG was, and like, well, can you set up a lobby? Like that's really like all we're asking for here is like we need a pregame lobby so that we can like set up the game.
That's horrible.
And like no, we can't do that. But what we can do is we can just make the pregame timer like 60 seconds. So you would have one person would make the game, and like everyone else had to join the game with that 60 seconds, and like that was it. That was like the lobby.
Jeez.
And so like there was a lot of like little things like that I think really helps having like a great team to like figure that out before the event starts, so you're not scrambling on your feet.
Literally.
But like that whole, I think there was probably like a 3-year transition there where the publishers were just specifically designing for things for online play, and they had like heartbeat, I think like monitors where you had to be connected, and if you weren't connected, like after every 10 minutes or so, try to send a signal, and then if it didn't, it had a chance to like drop out of like the LAN. But like from the always online thing, that I think we're at a much better spot we are now, where like the equipment and the titles are actually enable people to play
Yeah,
in a
they enable
tournament
you to play
environment.
lands.
But
Yeah.
there was like a 3 to 4 year period, kind of like in the mid 2010s.
Like probably just before
Wasn't too
Black
long
Ops
ago.
2.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it wasn't too long ago. Where we had to work through all of that and come up with
Yeah. I mean,
solutions.
that only makes sense because Black Ops 2 like finally like enabled, like they had like a really good codcaster mode. They had the
Oh
custom
yeah,
lobbies. They had theater modes. You could go back and watch things too. So like it really enabled a lot for like competitive Call of Duty, and like I think that really helped launch the space because the viewership in that game was crazy with like Optic and Nate Shot and Scump like averaging like 60,000 viewers on their own and like wild, you know?
oh yeah,
And that's where it
absolutely.
kind of blew up. How did your like job responsibility, did it really change much like as tournament director like over the past few years, like since like Black Ops 2?
I'll say, I mean, it's really been the same.
Yeah.
It's been like number one, like running like the open bracket on time, running the tournament on time, because ultimately it's a waterfall.
Yeah,
So
I guess you can just go through
if
like your whole like job as like a tournament director, you know, and
oh,
just kind of talk to that, explain that out
oh yeah,
because people
absolutely.
might be confused.
So basically, you know, if you walk into an event, you got your match to play. It's like, okay, well, like there's literally like, there might be up to 100, 200 other teams that got to play to get everyone playing on time. Basically, you have to run through this entire bracket of, you know, upwards of, you know, 20 plus rounds
Yeah,
when you add in like different heats. And so like basically it's like managing the logistics so that number one, like all teams like as close as possible can play towards their scheduled start time.
right.
So like that's like number one. And to do that, you have obviously you're supported by people. You know, like you know, Josh, you've been. Yeah, how many years have you
I'd
officiated?
started the beginning of World War II, so I did 2 years.
Okay, so you've been doing this for 2 years. Like
Yeah,
many people, like Josh, to actually like, be there, like boots on the ground, to really coach the players and get them
yeah,
and
and
going, and
manage
like
the
obviously
stations.
validate that everything is being done in accordance to the rules.
Yeah,
You know, something as simple as like score reporting, you wouldn't think is that hard, but or difficult, or complex, but it requires you to be attentive and understand what's going on and being able to write legibly. Yeah.
that was my biggest weakness.
And really, like if you like any individual station, like 95% of the time, like you're not going to really notice the official there. Like they're going to check in a couple of times kind of before the match, but really they're there so that if that 5% happens, you really have an independent person to like observe what's going on and really either
Yeah,
take control of the situation, or if it has to be escalated up to like my level, like I need to, if I'm gonna come to a station and something happens, like I can't really necessarily completely rely on just on an individual who obviously has a vested interest in, not even only a vested interest, like they can only see what they're sitting down to see. An official can see, because you know, easily jump between both sides of the team and, you know, validate whether an IT issue or a equipment issue failure. Um, so there's all that really component. So basically, it's managing a team of, you know, anywhere upwards of 20 Joshes,
yeah, 20, yeah, reps, you know.
to make sure everything actually gets done on time. To actually fit all these teams to in enough time, uh, like you basically for COD you're allowed like 1 hour for. And you think, okay, 1 hour, well, that's a lot of time, but like no, this is a best of three. So if a game goes to three, you know, the series goes to 3 games. That's roughly 15 minutes. Maybe you figure you got a warm up time set up. You know, do picks bans has been a big component over the past few years. You actually have like some of the time, like just think about like loading. If you talk like search and destroy, like just like the pregame loading into the game,
Yeah,
okay, that's like 20 seconds. But then you multiply that, it can go up to like 13 times. So there you just tacked on like 2 or 3 minutes.
literally.
So you add up all those things, and you really don't have much leeway. And so you need people to execute and oversee these stations. So like that, it sounds easy just to like, oh yeah, make sure they go on time, but like you really need to be really involved. Either a have good people like Josh,
Oh,
or you know,
thank you.
it's always a combination. Like typically, what we do is we have like a core team, and so we'd have
Yeah,
kind of core. Let's say we have 10 spots open. We'd have 7 to 8 people like Josh who are experienced, know the deal, and able to like really execute well. And a lot of times we try to bring in new people or locals to obviously scout for new talent and for new people who would help us out. But it's just also to kind of expose and bring others into it. So that's like, no, that's only number one there, just to get things done on time.
yeah,
Number two is kind of, I'll say, like kind of the dispute resolution.
Yeah,
So
you're
you're always
dealing
going
with
to have
all the
this.
problems, you know?
Yeah, so it's all the problems. So whether it's teams not showing up on time, to equipment malfunctions, that happen during the game, and then the teams are upset. And it's basically dealing with like the crap that you can't really control,
Right. Yeah, like
and everyone's going to be upset. Like, I mean, every event, there's always going to be a malfunction. If you have 1,000 Xboxes, or we run like 32 stations, and you have, so it's 300 or so Xboxes that are running, or
yeah.
PlayStations. I'm sorry, all your sponsors at PlayStation.
Oh, of
If we
course.
have 300 PlayStations that are all running, for 12 hours in a row, with people coming in, plugging out, changing settings, doing things, and doing this back to back to back, like, you're going to have them shut off. You're going to have wires
Right.
get disconnected.
Yeah, I
You're
guess I
gonna
can put it
have
into some perspective,
monitors
you know?
function.
So I guess for me, I'm the ref at the station. Pej is sitting at the desk, and we're like delivering scores to him, and any big time problems that we have, we're sending his way. So basically, we're sitting at the station, and you have to be like going through the players, making sure all controllers are working fine, and then usually what happens is, like, in the most crucial time in the game, something goes wrong. Whether it's their controller disconnects, their PlayStation, somebody's like the Bluetooth settings were wrong, so somebody like presses their PlayStation button on a different station, and then they blue screen, so they go to the main menu and they can't control anything because somebody else's controller is going wrong. Something like that, some big time problem, and then the player gets up, he's like, "Yo, ref, what the, like, yo, ref,
Yeah.
end the game," and you have to tell him, like, do not end the game, play it out. I'm gonna go get Pej, you know. So then Pej comes over, and he's talking to the pissed off player who's losing the match right now because he's sitting there at the broken screen or whatever. And then that's where Pej comes in and has to deal with the problem. So that's kind of usually where Pej always comes into the story every single time, you know?
So I'm the bearer of bad news. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the times, because I mean, a lot of the time it sucks. So when we talk to
That
refs,
really
like, we
is the
tell
thing.
them, like, hey, you basically have, there's a couple different types of problems. The two most common, like, let's say, like, there's an actual, like, a true equipment failure. So this is like your monitor shuts off, or like something wrong with that. Sometimes, like, people get knocked out of the game and disconnect and can't reconnect. Or sometimes, like, the PlayStation just blanks out.
Like,
and,
it's not
blue
their
screens,
fault.
or there's nothing you can do about it. But like, if there's nothing, like, think if you're playing a game and you're winning, maybe not by a huge margin, but you're comfortably winning. Let's say you're playing hardpoint and you got a nice little lead. If the other team, like, actually has an equipment failure, like, our rules dictate that we have to restart the match. Now there's like the God clause, not the God clause, but there is a clause that we can evaluate individual circumstances. So if the hard point was 249 to 10, yeah, we might just give it to the guys at 249. Let's say you're at a game that's 180 to 120. Like, that's,
A
you're
reasonable
winning, you're
game.
comfortable, but like, you have by no means won that.
No.
Like, even in like your inventory of score streaks, positioning, that's not going to carry you, past,
the next
just
70
from
points.
just from your initial set.
Yeah.
Like, that could only carry you maybe like 10 or 20 seconds, like, for me to be really leaning towards, like, not ending or not starting the game.
Sure.
So you come in here and you're like, okay, you got to restart the game. And then the team who's winning, who, I mean, rightly, they're upset. Hey, we were winning this game. Like, and the other thing that makes it jerky is, like, they don't know, like, what the other team
like
went through.
They only know their circumstance, right? They don't know the other team.
So they were playing, everything's fine. They're winning. Absolutely. And someone was like, oh no, there was a problem, and we got to restart, and we got to rebeat these guys all over again. And that's very difficult to swallow, and, like, understandably so. And then the other thing when you throw on top of it is, so where we can, like, kind of pick up, like, halfway, we do. Like, so, the CTF, like, where there is, like, an actual, like, halftime, and we can, like, okay, well, we can take the score from this point in time, like a control. But even doing that is, like, people have score streaks, or they have specialists, and, like, to account for that, like, well, we were winning, that totally means we were going to win the next round. Like, that doesn't necessarily mean that, but
no.
You can definitely understand, like, this is what drives, and especially when you're deep into the tournament and something like this happens, it's just
people flip out. They go crazy.
There's, like, literally nothing that we.
No.
Like, that's just, like, it's going to happen when you have that many games. It's going to happen. And then you have the second piece, which is, like, and this actually pretty common, is because it's a PlayStation and it deals with Bluetooth. People's controllers is not the most secure connection,
No.
and people don't necessarily do the diligence that they need to, that you should do every time you sit down at an actual competition. And that's simply like, when you sit down, you should be clearing off any Bluetooth that's on the PlayStation, because theoretically someone could be connected and come by and swing by, and it disconnects your controller, connects them.
Yeah, literally.
Like, so it can't do it if you disconnect it. Like, you can be completely wired in on your controller. Like, you can delete other profiles that are signed in, so it's only the profile that you have. So those things that everyone really should do, and it's really their responsibility to do, not very many people do that. And so inevitably, instead of a monitor crushing out, like, their controller disconnects. But it's not because the PlayStation malfunction, is because they may not have had the best USB cord to secure
or
the
they
connection.
have an old controller.
They didn't disconnect all the devices, and at some point there's some responsibility you got to take on yourself. And then having that conversation that we can't restart the game, and yes, you did lose control of your character because you didn't have the right USB port, or your USB port was damaged and disconnected at a crucial point.
Yeah.
Like, they're extremely upset. So you have to, we try to communicate the rules and what it is, and inevitably what happens, oh, well, I was playing, they were fine, and you have to kind of talk through those situations to try to get them comfortable with it. And honestly, like 95% of the people are good. It's always those like one or two people that, you think about it, 5-on-5, all it takes is 10%. There's one person to be really upset about it, and then they cause a scene.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it happened every single time,
That's kind of what you
There's always the one guy that got totally pissed and then threw everybody else under the bus,
Oh, yeah. And everyone always tries to, they justify and they rationalize, and they say, well, this, last event, this happened to this other player,
and the ref said this
or
last event.
I was just at the station earlier.
Yeah. Oh, dude, every time.
And I love it because, like, for a couple of reasons. Like, number one, like, you do know, I tell them, like, you do know, I have been the tournament director for every single Call of Duty open bracket that MLG has ever.
Like, you probably were not playing COD when I started working COD events, Like,
and I'm like, and so, like, the decision that you said had to come from me, not like the tournament, like physically, like personally me, and I didn't make that decision.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to it. It's like, well, you need to understand, like, there are 19 different circumstances that come into a decision. Just as I mentioned, like the controller thing, like all those little components are factors into like what the decision is.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what those are, you're just a spectator looking over the station over there, or you heard from, telephone down the line from my friend heard from their friend. The opponents that they were playing when happened. Like, you obviously are not going to have the full set of information, and likely it's going to be upsetting.
Yeah, for sure.
So, that's probably it's frustrating, but it's also, it's an opportunity to communicate kind of like what we look for in terms of an operation of the game.
Oh, no, for sure. It was always the case, something would happen, the guy would get so pissed, and you're just like, bro, there's literally nothing we could do about this. And he's like, yo, half the time what would happen is, like, something would actually, like, be a real problem, and then they would end the game. But we always told them, like, do not end the game, But they would, like, end the game before you even have a chance to say that. And then by that default, they have to forfeit because they ended the game before we gave an official ruling. And that's when they really got pissed.
The good thing about that one is probably one of the most common complaints, or like appeals, is probably a better way to put it. You're just, if a pro did this, you let him do it.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're not treating us the same.
If we were on main stage, this would be completely different,
Exactly. But for that specific reason, like, a lot of people did that. They would end the game, and there's a specific rule that says if you end the game without referee's permission, game over, you forfeit. And it's really to prevent or to allow the continuation of play in the event that an issue that initially was identified by a player or observed wasn't an issue caused by, like, equipment, or it was basically their own. So it's basically to allow for some type of investigation period
to confirm that that's the actual problem,
Right. Because I think we had it years ago, like when we first kind of ran into problems with like the Bluetooth and the controllers, we were probably more quick than we should have been to restart matches. And then when we started to actually allow time to investigate, like, okay, well, why is your controller not connecting? It's not because the PlayStation is malfunctioning.
No.
It's not because our wire that we gave you is malfunctioning. It's because, your port on your controller is like not tight. Or it's because you didn't delete the 19 Bluetooth devices off your PlayStation. And so that's really what it had. And we've actually DQ'd in multiple occasions, actually professional teams in tournament matches for ending the game prematurely. This isn't just once. This has happened multiple times.
Yeah.
So when people say that, we say like, well, no, we've done this multiple times. We treat you the same. Like this was actually streamed. Like they talked about it. I think it was Orlando. There was a pretty big case in Orlando champs. I think it was 2017.
Oh yeah.
In the pool play, and this is the famous like punch the wall.
Yeah.
Punch a hole through the wall. I forget the player, but that happened, and it's like, well, don't end the game.
I know, unreal, man. And that happened all the time, and it's like, dude, you gotta learn at some point. Usually by the end of the year, they start figuring it out. Usually, like the teams, they keep coming back and they figure it out eventually. But those first like 2 or 3 events is just hell on earth half the time with those disputes because players just don't understand.
And especially if it's like a new game and like, so everyone's somewhat new to the whole system.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it happened all the time. So I mean, I guess I can kind of transition us. So like with your whole experience with competitive Call of Duty and all that you've been doing, right, and dealing with Major League Gaming for so long, like, how do you feel about the transition for COD from like the more local open bracket system to a franchising model where teams have to pay to be a part of the league? You can't earn your way into the league anymore. You have to pay to be in it. Like, how do you feel about that? And like, how do you think that's going to work in COD, changing from such a homegrown, like, localized, like, you can compete and become a pro just by being good system? How do you feel about the change?
Overall, I think it's good.
Yeah.
We're done. End of discussion. No.
Yeah. All right. We're done.
So there's a lot to it. So I think one way to look at it, this is kind of how I try to explain to people. Is if you think like a typical, like a maturity model, and it's like, oh, it's typical graph, it's 2D graph. It's like you have immature, then you have mature. And so if you look at like professional sports, it's like, okay, obviously like MLB, NFL, like the traditional, the major, played sports are super mature. They have like, billion-dollar franchises.
Right.
And then, like immature, you have then like maybe like, Ultimate Frisbee, I don't know, whatever.
Even like the MLS
amateur type games. Oh, well, they're still probably closer to the top.
Oh no, yeah, they're higher.
So like that, I think
sure.
that's So I think that's a generally good scale, but I think people really need to look at it like 3-dimensionally. And what I mean is like a mature state for professional sports right now and like MLB and NFL is going to be one thing, like, but that's going to be different than it is for bowling or
for sure.
even like tennis or like surfing, other things like that.
Golf.
It doesn't necessarily mean like there's not necessarily more mature that they need to get. It's like it's almost like they're in a 3-dimensional scale where like their top level maturity is just something completely different. So when I look at like COD and in gaming, what I see is like you have the franchise and the titles and publishers who want to like basically compete with the NFL. They want to compete with MLB. They want to compete with MLS. And to do that, like you totally need to go all out and to do a franchise mode, because that means like success is not just like, oh, you're talented. Success is obviously being good at the game, but it's also being a part of the actual growth of the industry.
Yeah.
And to do that, like if you need to be people involved, like you can't just have the publisher pushing down everything, creating everything. You need to have, you need to distribute the basically talent. So you have different teams trying to build up their own markets and trying to get other people involved.
For sure.
And then you obviously have to, share some revenue. And I think that model is total. If you're really trying to be like a global or even like a national on that scale, I think you just kind of have to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And like, and it does put up some barriers maybe, but like like in the like you're gonna kick out like people who maybe have the talent, but actually not. Let me rephrase that. You're not kicking out the people who have the talent of the game.
Yeah.
It's just instead of maybe running the team, is this more growth oriented, entrepreneurial type. But they're still like the role of the talented individual. They can still play. They can still commentate. They can still produce their content. And honestly, like they're going to benefit more from the whole esports as a whole. So it just they may not be in control where they may have been before you had to figure out how to finance $25 million to buy a team.
Yeah, literally. My goodness.
But so I think like the roles are shifting a little bit, but in the end, like everyone's gonna end up, I think, much better and much more better off.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I definitely think franchising is like a great direction for Call of Duty, and it only makes sense to follow like League of Legends and follow what Overwatch was doing. But I mean, how do you feel about the localization versus like the online nature of the brands when it comes to like localizing in cities in North America versus doing something different?
So that's an interesting thing. So like, I totally don't get why like Overwatch is like we're global, but then they geolocate their businesses or their teams into like major markets. The major market, like the rationale behind that is that's where your merchandise, your TV ad time, your watch time is going to be generated on that. I'm like, so you're taking an old school business model of like old school sports and then trying to apply it to a global scale. And I like, it's not that those can't be, excuse me, not that they can't be reconciled, but I think it is going to grow some challenges. Like, and let's be honest, like the 100 US viewers is worth
an
enormous amount more than 100 Chinese viewers or 100
for sure
viewers or 100 even South American. So
I mean, that is an advantage that COD has then, you know.
So that's the thing that I think consoles super heavy in the Americas. So like if anyone's going to do it, actually makes sense, I think, for like
versus more than Overwatch,
because you already have. Yeah, I think so. I think Overwatch is going to. I think they'll still be successful. I think it'll take a longer time period to get where they're trying to get, and it may be a little bit more bumpy than they expected. But they'll eventually get there. Like I think, like there's still such a huge drive, and I think it's really generational.
Yeah.
So Overwatch will get there, and they'll figure out how to make money, but it's going to be a little bit bumpy. Whereas I think where you have local, if you are,
it's all good.
If you're local, like you have the consoles in North America, that can also drive like I would say the pipeline piece, where you have MLB, NBA, like everyone watches, but like only like 1% of the people who watch play.
Yeah.
Whereas like that is like inverse of
right. Like if you're
where,
watching competitive
100%
COD,
or
you're
like
playing
out of all the people
COD.
who play, only 1% actually watch esports.
Yeah, for sure.
So to basically flip that or to get the pipeline, I think you need to really bring your schools and your local people to really bring it on par. Like, oh, you're playing Pee Wee football, you're playing T-ball, you're playing this. It's like you have those things at your schools or your centers, and I think the Call of Duty is probably a better fit. Well, at least until you're old enough, I guess.
I know that's the kind of thing. The age gap there, like I guess the age limit there is interesting for COD, but
yeah, but I think the thing is you got to get them young.
Yeah,
I found like
it's the ironic thing of Call of Duty. It really is. Like, oh yeah, this is an M-rated game, totally. But I mean, kids, like, please play it. You know, like, please.
So I think totally makes sense. There's still like not all esports definitely doesn't have to try to franchise out. Like you can definitely have, like I say, on that third dimension, you can still have a super mature esport that's just not trying to franchise out, but it's still trying to run, all these other tournaments and have an actual league or have an actual
CS:GO hasn't franchised, but they're obviously killing it. So it's.
And that has been interesting because I think Valve's been pretty hands up. I don't say it's not been publisher driven, but if you compare with like Overwatch, Blizzard is like, I'm going to create a global
Yeah.
esports, and I'm going to funnel a whole bunch of money into it. Boom, there we go. Whereas like that was like, oh, that's cool. You guys are
Yeah,
doing
literally.
this.
It's
Oh
crazy.
yeah, we'll kind of we'll help you out a little bit, but yeah, good
Yeah.
job, guys.
I mean, it's completely different perspective from the
um,
developers. And then their league hasn't even been well organized yet. They're still killing it because the game works for esports. So it's like it's a
oh yeah,
weird balance where you can like really push it as like a publisher, or you can like really push it as a league, or you can like just the game can just be really good and work, you know? So it's kind of like a balance of all three in a way to create like a good esport.
oh yeah. I think you got four like Toro's foundations. Let's see if I
Yeah.
get these right. So like number one's big. You actually have to have a
Yeah,
good game. Like it needs to
for
be
sure.
competitive. Like it needs to be like viewable, and you need to have like alignment, I think, in the publishers to try to actually like allow it to be in
Yeah.
esports. So like they all work in conjunction, but if either one just like knocks it out of the park. I think that's what we kind of saw like
Yeah.
Fortnite is. It was just such a popular game and it had this enormous following. Like, oh, they don't really have a competitive system like set
No.
up yet.
Didn't have like a casting
Like
system at all.
and whole like
Yeah,
nothing else
no.
was there. It was other than like it was just like a super pop, and it was able to come. And I think that's kind of a similar trade.
Yeah.
And so like what is mature for like a Fortnite thing doesn't have to be mature for Call of Duty. It doesn't have to be like what is mature state for Halo. It doesn't have to be what's a
Yeah.
mature state for Apex. So it's I think it's a pretty dynamic
I
field, and you
agree.
can have say like different levels of what like
It
mature
seems
state
like
is.
that's where like the people who've been esports for a long time, like the Adam Apicellos of the world and you and others, like versus
I'm glad that you put me
of
in the
course,
same
of
caliber
course.
as like as Adam.
You are his equivalent. No. But I think that's where like there's the massive difference in perspective from an esports person who's been here for so long versus like a sports person who's coming in as like, oh, another franchise model. Exactly how we do it with NFL or with MLB. And there's a massive perspective difference. And if those organizations that don't understand that are going to fail, you know? Like it's just you can't just slap the football perspective. You might be able to slap the football money onto esports and make it work for a while though. That might be the difference though.
Yeah, I mean it's a little. There's always a little bit of luck. There's always like, and I'll say the more money you have, the longer you have to get luck.
Yeah, literally.
Um, so it's you get a little bit of luck, some money, and just other little components of things that are out of your control, and before you know it,
Yeah.
you can just fall into it or not.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think it'll take for COD to get back to like a prominent esports? Because I mean, the player base for Call of Duty is there for COD to like really take off. I mean, right now, the Pro League, gets like the last year's averaging like what 50,000 viewers, 40,000 viewers for a Pro League
Yeah.
match, where like 20 plus million people buy Call of Duty each year. So I mean, the percentages there make no sense. Where COD could easily, you're pulling in less than 1% of the players to watch COD.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think that if I knew the answer to
You'd be
that,
the director of Activision.
they'd be paying me a lot of money. I would have a much better
Yeah,
background soon to move out.
for sure.
So I think one of the key things, like if you want, like I really think like that player pipeline, like right now it's like COD's a super casual game, and there's ways you can like mechanically in the game push people towards esports, and it's not even like pushing to esports. It's just a matter of setting up game types that are fair and are not like RNG, and work. And I think the biggest hindrance, or one of the biggest hindrances to that,
like a league play system, like a good league play.
Yeah, like but for the longest time, you can go. Like, we all love going pub stomping.
Yeah.
Like I have some amazing time going pub stomping. But if you want it like to get to shepherd people into like, hey, like joining into a game where people are going in and out and just doing their own thing, and it's just like, it's not a good game. Like if you get them into a system where you can control the environment and allow them to create the content, and then that's really kind of what I think the esports is like, you think like, I don't know, you're like Web 2.0.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what's Web 2.0? It's people making content as opposed to like the publishers.
Yeah, literally.
So you got to look at like multiplayer is like Web 2.0 for gaming. It's instead of the content being like, oh, I got a new cool mission. Oh, I got a cool new gun. I got a cool new skin or
Yeah.
mission or quest or whatever. It or even like when you talk about like maps. Oh, I got a good map. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
The content's actually the competition and like the actual interaction and playing with a team, playing against other humans who are constantly thinking of new ways to do things. And as long as the rules around it and people are pushed into fair rules and a good like competitive structure with like good matchmaking, I think that'll be a huge driver. I think there's been a lot of focus on what do you call it, like player optimization or engagement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where instead of building the matchmaking based on like skill, you base it on like I want them to keep playing.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Instead of like, okay, like listen, I can have fun playing chess whether I'm a grandmaster or I'm a noob, as long as I'm playing with someone
who's on my same level,
relative skill.
Yeah.
Right? If you give me a tic-tac game, like I'm not gonna have tic-tac-toe. I'm not gonna have that much fun.
Yeah.
And so setting up, be like, oh well, if you win, you're gonna keep on playing. Like your game should be fun enough that even if you lose and you have a good game, you should have fun.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I think if you have the right components all set up there, like
oh man,
that's how you shepherd the pipeline player base. But like that itself is like a pretty. I think the current business model is like, well, no, we're just going to keep selling 20 million copies a year and keep people playing. They're pub stomping games that they have some fun, but they don't really get too involved in.
I know,
and maybe it makes the most financial sense. I don't know.
But
I don't work in their P&L.
They haven't really explored other options the past like 6 years, though. That's the weird thing to me. It's like, there's no way it's just coincidence that the game that's had the most loved ranked play system, basically of the last 7 years, was Black Ops 2, and it was the most popular competitive game of the last 7 years for Call of Duty. Like, that can't just be a coincidence,
Oh, there's where you're running.
Yeah, like crazy. Who would have thought?
Was Call of Duty 2 the actually most popular? Like, was it most sold?
Black Ops 2?
Yeah.
Modern Warfare 2 would have been the most sold, but Black Ops 2 is probably the second most sold. Or actually, Modern Warfare 3 might have been the most sold, and then Modern Warfare 2, then Black Ops 2.
Okay.
Yeah, it was those top three for sure.
So I think then they would just tell you, oh, that's just hindsight.
Yeah, but
when you're in the board meeting,
it's just
crazy.
Like,
well, we can sell loot crates, loot boxes,
but it's just wild because there was no league play system in Ghosts, in Infinite Warfare, in Black Ops 3. There was like kind of one, but not like a real good one.
Yeah.
And World War II is the only one that actually had one, but the rank play didn't come out till like late March.
And it was botched.
And it was and the matchmaking was terrible. So
I was like I had like a 1. I think it was like a 2.0 KD, but I was like I lost like my first 20 games. I was like 6 and like 14.
Oh man,
because like people would quit out, like because you couldn't go in as a group.
Yeah,
and so like this is where I think like there's an enormous opportunity to. Like if you took the amount of modeling and mathematical talent that you have to like make sure people are having fun in matchmaking by like saying, oh wait, you've lost 3 games in a row.
Put you in an easy
one.
You
in with some news.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like you took that power and you put it towards like that's I think the biggest hurdle is how do you have a team-based game that you have a barrier to entry of like creating a team and playing together. So you just want to go in by yourself, but then you're going to get stomped by if you're playing by a whole team.
Yeah.
It's like, so how do you have a team-based system that you can be fairly rewarded for your individual performance? And it's not just stat, whoring, or it's not just, oh, I'm going to sit down and make sure my ratio is great, but it's actually contributing to the team's win.
Yeah.
And like I think like we definitely have the processing power, we definitely have the manpower, the brain power to do
the
it.
The analytics, the ability to make that happen. Like, why can't we do that? I don't know.
Like, and like I don't even think like Overwatch does it. It's like I understand you want to be tied to your team's win. Like if you lose, you don't necessarily want.
But your individual performance definitely matters.
Oh yeah. And you definitely have a huge data set now, like that you have all these competitive games where you can just look, okay, these things in our model, these 20 components, which, we're not even going to disclose them. We're just going to have our own black box.
But if it
they might
works,
not
it
like
works.
that. And it's simple things like you could be like, okay, so if you're like the thing like Overwatch, if you're getting kills near the objective, you get more points for that. So they already have some of this like foundation built in.
Yeah, which
and you have that in Call of Duty. Like if you're getting kills near the objective, that's probably more valuable than getting kills off in the spawn 10 miles away from the objective.
Yeah.
And if you have an enormous amount of like data sets, you can find what those attributes are to actually where people who and encourage not people to like, abuse the system, but like find these components show like great teamwork and someone who's contributing to their win.
Yeah. And I think if they did that right, I mean, if they can create a league play system that drives people into wanting to play competitive COD, like it only makes sense that the COD scene will grow immensely. And like, hopefully now that they have more like stake in the game, they have actual money involved now and big time money involved with the esports scene. Finally, maybe they'll actually care about it. Hopefully. That's kind of been like where I've like really planted my flag, like on my channel. I've been like, all right, guys, there's finally money in the game. They've never had money in the game before. So hopefully this means that they might start paying a little bit more attention, but maybe I'm giving a little bit too much credit. I don't know, but
you might be a little optimistic. Honestly, like, hey, Black Ops 4 was the entire game was multiplayer, so like all money was available for multiplayer. But did they have like a solid matchmaking?
They had a terrible
experience.
It's unreal. I know
because I don't think the really it is almost like a culture shift. Is like you need to have like the intent of the builders to do that.
Yeah.
And like this is what I call like this is the foundation. I thought it was like this is stakeholder it is. And if they don't want it, like that's completely fine. You make your game. But you can see like it's very clear, like a lot of like they obviously like Riot, like they had a very straightforward intention.
Yeah.
Like their mission was to build this, and you can look at all the things that they've done has been to this goal of getting 100%. This huge league. It's same thing with Overwatch. So I think Black Ops is interesting because it wasn't created like with that. Wasn't born with that in mind.
Not at all.
Like if you think of COD, I remember COD. Like remember it was like actually like World War One. It's like 2003 when it came out, or World War Two, and like the multiplayer was like your standard multiplayer back then. It's like they basically just threw you on a map and like, oh, you get these guns,
kill each other.
You play on Carrington. And you don't snipe in Carrington.
Just TDM or maybe search and destroy, but
oh yeah, it was just like an afterthought. And then they got really big and popular, but the problem is like the esports didn't catch on until after like the stream game had already been
That's
popular.
The thing.
So that like mission statement, if you will, was I won't say lost on them, but it wasn't there.
Yeah,
it's driving at the start. It kind of got hitched afterwards, and not that it has influence, but it's not kind of I think where you want it to be if you want to see like full blown.
I agree. So hopefully over the next year or two, now that they actually have $25 million from 12 organizations. At least it's now probably listed on their financial statements. Because before competitive COD was probably listed under marketing, So
marketing, yeah.
Now it might actually.
Or I was gonna say like they're just like we're just getting paid back for all the investment money that we've made.
So now that it might actually show up on the financial statement as like here's like the competitive COD section and whatever it's gonna end up in the financials. Like hopefully that'll actually get some attention towards it and like. Considering they're a corporation, people actually care about it now. So that's where I get a little optimistic now. Is that hopefully that's where like the attention starts showing up, and they're like, okay, how do we actually drive people to watch this? Because we actually have horses in the race now. So
yeah, I think we're a little ways away from that.
Yeah.
But that's always the goal. Like you can look at when they figured out microtransactions. How like now that's like huge.
Yeah.
Because it drives so much money. But so like once esports, I think there was almost like an inflection point where they actually see it being profitable, and like we're not there yet, and I think we're actually probably fairly significantly away from there. I'll say multiple years.
Yeah.
Now there might be like a couple titles here, publishers here and there, but I think when we're talking like COD, Overwatch, League of Legends, we are. I think we're years away.
Oh, I agree.
From
once you get to a point where the viewers who are watching that game live right now can make purchases in game while on stream and like drive revenue while watching the game, that's when publishers will be like, oh, wow, esports, we got to pay attention, And it's just not there yet.
And And I'm like, there's a lot of opportunity to do
Yeah.
that. Like I see that so much. It's just it'll take time, like anything, and it's exciting, but it
Yeah.
takes time.
No, for sure. Well, thanks for coming out for this, man. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I'm trying to crush the talk way.
I know
too
we
much.
could go on forever and ever, but yeah, I really appreciate it. I mean, this was the first conversation. Hopefully, we can have more conversations like this, me and you, other people as well. Make some fun conversations.
I mean, it's a
it.
high bar.
I know
I
the
didn't,
bar's way
you know,
too high now. No one's gonna
but
show
yeah.
out because they're gonna be intimidated. But no, I appreciate it again. Thanks for tuning out, and guys, thanks for watching. We always appreciate it. We'll be back with hopefully more of these conversations down the road during Modern Warfare. So again, thanks for coming out. Thanks, Pej, for talking with us, and we'll see you in the next
cheers,
video.
man.